I'm Dream Queen. You're in the cab with me. Thank you so much for rolling. You can find archives of the show and find us at In the Cab Radio on Instagram, Facebook, and Linktree. Welcome my guest right now, Oriana Lee. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. It's about time. And it's always on time.
It
right?
is divine providence, divine timing. I'm a big fan of it.
Absolutely.
I was wondering if I was going to fill the audience in on how this finally came to be. I'm out there losing my mind at the Family Stone show a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Talking to my homie, like, what do we do? What do we do? And here come Coach O walking by. What do we do, Coach?
Let's go. We're going to run the play.
They're going to run the play. We got to figure, I appreciate your vibe. You know, we've seen each other and known each other, in the community at large, but really haven't spent a lot of time together one-on-one.
Yeah.
But I really feel like from what I know of you and your work and your story, just a little bit that I know, I wanted to share you with my audience. And I love it.
That.
Yeah, please, I appreciate you. It's early in the morning. You truck down here, and I just really appreciate the effort, okay, and everything you do every day. So please, would you mind introducing yourself to the audience and telling folks a little bit about yourself and what you like to do?
Yeah, a little bit of a lot. So I am Oriana Lee, and I am gender expansive. I prefer my name, but I'm open to any and all pronouns. I do so many different things in this world. I've had a lifetime of purpose. So I'm parent first to 5 wonderful kids. Everybody's grown now, so I've got 18 to 28. So I like to say I'm kind of looking forward to embarking on my second childhood, Nas style. And I have been an MC most of my life. I started rapping when I was about 10. So hip hop is kind of how I live and what I live. It's the culture that, everything that I pretty much stand on comes from. Peace, love, unity, having fun, knowledge of self, all the important tenets. And from there, I think I just kind of embarked on a life of artistry. I've been a writer most of my life. I've been a journalist. I have a degree in English and in writing, but also education. I've been a teacher my entire life. I've taught so many different kinds of things. I started out at the YMCA when I was 16. And down to this past year, I taught art in the schools all over the city of Santa Fe. I teach circus. I'll be teaching circus today. We'll be doing a try-it-out zone at the ball field from 4 to 6, me and a few of my other Wise Full coaches. So please come out and hang out with us and learn some object manipulation. So I've been doing circus for about 10 years, and just about everything you can do in circus I've done in terms of the roles from admin all the way to directing and coaching. And I literally did start at Wiseful as a wellness coach. It's kind of the first thing I did. My son wanted to be in circus, and I thought he was going to have to run away and jump on the back of a train because I thought that's how you got in circus. And that didn't exactly happen, but he did actually run away to do circus, and he's still doing it. So from there, I started doing my wellness coaching stuff there, and then I hung upside down one day, and it's been almost 10 years. So just a few of the things I do.
Right. I remember seeing y'all in the circus at, I think it was over at the Linsick.
Yeah.
And it does really bring out the inner child. I know for me, and they say that it does for a lot of people. I was like, I want to do that,
Absolutely.
Well, you were schooling me the other day in the pre-interview about Wise Fool having roots here in Cerrillos.
Yeah, the Cerrillos Madrid area, from what I understand, really embraced the group when they came from the Bay Area. And it was one of the first places they landed. And I'm told that people that, just had some juggling equipment or had some aerial equipment, they would just go out. From what I imagine when people talk about it, it's just kind of in someone's backyard or just whatever space would accommodate it. And that's how Wise from New Mexico took off, from what I understand.
Wow.
And it's been, I think, roughly 30 years, somewhere around there.
So how'd you get involved with them? You were saying your son wanted to run away and join the circus, but how'd you learn about Wise Fool?
I learned about Wiseville first because my son was a b-boy, and the b-boys used to be in the circus. I think you're talking about Circus Luminous that was at the Lindsay.
Okay.
So the first year we lived here, he was in a b-boy crew, and they participated in that circus. So that's how I knew about them.
Would you tell my audience what a b-boy is?
Yeah, b-boy, just a break dancer. And hip-hop, that's just one of the primary ways in which, we express. And so my son, being a b-boy with the 3HC crew that's been in Santa Fe for quite a long time, many decades, they got cast just to perform. And so, like I said, I had an awareness, but I still didn't know how he would get involved or anything like that until he finally said he was graduating high school early. I homeschooled all my kids. So they've been able to kind of graduate at their own pace. And so he was like 14, 15, and he wasn't really ready to leave home, but he wanted to do this circus thing. So it's the only organization I'd ever heard of or had real direct contact with that was circus. So I reached out to the people who were running it at the time, and we went from there.
So when you were saying that you became a wellness coach, you really stepped into that modality by working with Wiseville. How did that evolve?
Actually, I brought that to Wiseville because it's what I was already doing. I went to graduate school to train to become a therapist, but I didn't actually ever go that path. I actually took what I thought was going to be clinical training at first, and I never went that road. I just went straight into wellness coaching. Somebody was telling me, a peer of mine who was also in that same graduate program had gotten her wellness coaching certification and told me that she thought it'd probably be a better way to go, a better path for so many reasons. I was having a lot of challenges around being in school and learning some of the ethics around therapy, and it wasn't really resonating with some of the things that I was expected to uphold in certain ways. And being from the Bible Belt, you could probably imagine what so many of those things are related to, from race to gender to sexuality. So I went the wellness path and thought that actually I was leaving Tennessee to go to LA to start my own practice there. And then I came here for one day, and it's been almost 12 years. Never made it to LA.
There's a few threads in this that I want to follow. Do you mind telling people your story of how you wound up here?
Yeah, I mean, enchantment and entrapment.
Yeah, I was going to say, so many of us have that we planned on coming here for what I call, when people ask me how I wound up here, I tell them it's my Gilligan's Island tour. Mm-hmm. Like, it's that 3-hour tour that you just wind up there forever.
That's a great way to put it.
Gilligan's Island.
Yes.
I mean, I was supposed to be passing through too. So, you say like the one day I was going to spend like 3 months on the land and a year, and then finish my book of poetry and roll on. I had a passport, everything. I was ready to truck.
Wow.
But life happened, and I wound up staying here and really enjoying it. They say about this area that a lot of folks try to make it here and are expelled. Some of us are pulled here. And when I first visited, folks at the Holler at the time, when my first stop from the airport, my friend brought me there for lunch. And all these folks are sitting there talking about land of entrapment. I was like, don't use that word around me. Do not use that word around me. You do not know me. But your story was kind of famous, and I was going to shy away from it until we talked about it in the pre-interview, because I think it's really important for people to know your experience, and I feel like we can teach from our wounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there are quite a few iterations of how I came to be here, to be perfectly honest. Mm-hmm. It does feel like enchantment and entrapment, but I feel like it started in 2008 when a promoter was first bringing me here just as an MC, and I would do shows in Santa Fe. And I came for a few years just to do that. I would do shows, I would record, I would do photography sessions, any kind of work that this particular promoter could get me. He was really plugged in to the scene. So that's how I started coming. And the very first time I even came and it was time for me to leave, my flight just randomly got canceled. So this kind of started, like, I guess when I first touched the land, this intention of the land claiming me is kind of how I think of it. So it was not an easy path to get back home. Finally did. Like I said, came another year, did the thing, and I still loved it here. So fast forward to 2013 when I was on my way to LA. I was just kind of coming through the Albuquerque area, and I realized, like, I'm kind of close to Santa Fe, and had always wanted to take my kids to Santa Fe just because I felt it was magical. And so we were coming through what was supposed to be one day stop. We couldn't find a place to sleep. And we eventually found out the next day it was Bloom Fiesta weekend. So we weren't going to find any hotel lodging or anything. So somebody that I had met within the 24 hours of being here said, I have a friend who has a casita, come stay. What was supposed to be a 3-day stay turned into a few weeks, and then it snowed. And then I said, oh, we got to go. Didn't even plan to be here in the snow. I didn't even have winter clothes, so nobody told me it snowed in the desert. Right? How mountain desert is different.
Yes.
So yeah, with that, I took a trip to Taos, and what was supposed to be a field trip to the hot springs and to the Pueblo there ended up just kind of being a really traumatic experience with police brutality, and I just will say it in that easy way of summing it up. So I was never planning to live here, but because of that situation and having to go to court and do different things, it made sense to stay. Yeah. So like I said, what ended up being that short week, a couple weeks of visit, has now almost been 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here. So one of the things that I was asking when we met at the rail yard the other day was about your idea as a wellness coach. Are people coming to you trying to metabolize things like police brutality, the fascism that we're living under in this society right now, how to maintain hope in these times? And I think it's really great as you as a circus performer, and I believe in the power of the sacred clown, the sacred satirist, and I'm always here on the radio trying to help people stay up and survive this, and if not thrive, at least come through whole and intact.
Yeah.
If not healed in some way.
Yeah.
Do you have things that you can offer to us about that?
Yeah, I mean, when you tie it to a circus, I mean, Wise Fool, that's what the Wise Fool is all about. The jester who is kind of making fun of the thing so that we can digest the hard stuff in a way that's connected to laughter. But hope, I mean, for me, it's really not a word I like so much. I heard Don King once tell this story about being in the hope business. And this is when he was a number man and was tied to doing different street hustles, before he was a promoter. And it always kind of struck me when he told the story about how, like, hope is a place where we can almost be preyed on. Because when you're hoping, there's kind of almost like a streamline of desperation. It's real low level, if that makes any sense. So I really like to move towards knowing and trusting when I think about the things that sustain me and sustain others. So one thing I often with clients, whether I'm working with individuals, groups, I'm always taking people to their breath, because it's one of those things we each own of ourselves that we can control and decide how to allow it to move in our body. It's our life force. So I feel like teaching breath work is one of the simplest ways to teach us about tapping into ourselves and maintaining in spite of what's happening in the world, right? Because this world that we're living in this larger way, in this planet that we're on, that's one thing, but then we have the world that's us, right? The universe that's us. And there has to be a way to maintain that homeostasis within ourselves, I think, before we can even really try to be out in the world, helping, showing up, protesting. Often we're giving from an empty place when we're doing that, right? We're giving and showing up so others can see us give, and then behind the scenes, we're not giving to ourselves. We're a wreck, we're a mess because of something very simple of not being able to self-regulate, right. Which, like, I feel breath work takes us to that place.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do think that is also tied to the trials that we go through as healers and teachers. I've had people tell me they don't feel connected to a healer that hasn't been through things, and to go to the edge, and then at that point of desperation where it's like, I can come back from this, and in times like these, it's really inspiring, and helping other people learn how to come back to themselves. And on that, when you were talking about purpose, being in purpose, excuse me if this is like free therapy hour, because It's been my goal for quite a while to have. That was the other thread I wanted to follow in your story, because it's been my goal for at least the past year to have alternative therapists and healers in, because exactly what you're saying, the structure of psychotherapy as we understand it and has been taught in the colonized America, it's hurtful to a lot of people, or it doesn't vibe with people who don't subscribe to these clinical values. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the place I want to hold, and I want to just give people a little bit more curiosity, or to get them to think outside of, this is a therapist with this kind of degree that operates in this type of office and this type of modality, and that's the only way that I can get help, quote unquote. So I'm going to just, bring out some of the theories and how you practice. So can you share some of your story about how you tapped into your purpose?
Like I said, I feel like I have many purposes. I don't feel like I've had a linear kind of walk around career, profession, or anything that I've done. And I'm grateful for that. I've had periods where I feel like I've kind of beat myself up because, they say jack of all trades, master of none. So sometimes it kind of feels like that. Tell me the rest.
The rest is better than a master of one.
Okay.
That's what I heard.
And that's where I land then. That's where I land. So I've had to go back and forth with that, like feeling I'm pulled in so many areas of just being myself. But all of these purposes must be, and I think I've just been led to them one by one, and I get to know myself in a way where I just can't do without that aspect of myself. Right. So I think that's what happened. So like one of the most recent things in like the last 5 years, I've really uncovered this ability to be a visual artist, which I hadn't done a whole lot previous to that. I had almost done all of my artistry under my voice in so many different ways as an MC. And learning that there were other ways for me to express creatively, it kind of took me away from all of these other things I thought I wanted to do, right? So now I'm doing art so much, I'm doing even less coaching sometimes, or I'm doing less teaching sometimes, or I'm doing less writing, I'm doing less emceeing, because it's coming in and filling a space that I didn't even know it needed to fill. But I allowed myself to kind of just follow that, because what I learned is that's where my healing was. So for so many of us, I think our healing is in our ability to be a creative, and many of us have masked that or oppressed it because we've come up in a system where it doesn't always support that. I know when I wanted to be a writer early in life, everybody was saying to me, starving artist, that's what you want to be? You want to be broke. Right? Because the things you say you want to be, that's what it means. Or you want to be a teacher, or you want to be broke.
Oh my God, you sound like my mom. No.
Right. And no. I think many of us feel like that. So like going back to some of the techniques or modalities that I use when I'm working with people, even when I'm just doing like an art show, I've been fortunate to have quite a few art shows over the last few years. And I like to really be present so that I can talk to the people who are looking at my art. And one of the things I often talk to them about is how they are creating, and being able to uncover maybe what it is that they're not using. Because it's surprising to me how many people look at my art and much of it is abstract. And they look at it and they say, like, I can never do that. And I can only do structure, right? I can only reference something, or I can only do it from a certain place of a thing I know to draw over and over. And the reason I can do the art that I do is because I'm tapping into this ancestral place that's inside of me, right? I'm trusting myself. I'm trusting that whatever I put out is meant to be, even if it doesn't always look like whatever I think this picture in my head should look like, or what I think I'm supposed to be creating. So I feel like I try to lead people to themselves in that way, right? And going back to teaching about healers, when I'm working with people, I'm wanting them to know they are their first healer. Right? The healer is not first outside of ourselves. It's not that there aren't healers outside who can help us, but we are each healers. We are each teachers. Like, these are ways in which we carry. And I continue to say, like, we're taught early in life, specifically by public education, that things have to be contextualized or put in a certain box of being a way, as opposed to, could you imagine if as kindergartners we were taught that we were healers, and the things that we were being taught, like self-regulation or controlling our breath work or moving and being present in our body, knowing how to be grounded. If we were taught those things in kindergarten, what kind of healed adults we'd be. But that be anti the system because that don't make nobody any money. Us being healed takes away from our economic structure because we're a structure of pharmaceuticals and Western medicine. Yeah. Not that there isn't some purpose in that, or some helpfulness in some of that. But when we're in an economy where that's our greatest cash crop, as they call it, right? A cash crop used to actually be a type of crop or something that could be grown. Now our greatest cash crop is our pharmaceuticals. So it's like our healing is not suited for the economy. Our wellness is not suited for the economy. It's why anything that we choose that's not covered under the FDA in terms of healing medicines doesn't get approved, right? Yeah. It can't be monetized in the same way.
So one of the things that you do is cannabis coaching. Mm-hmm. Say more about that. Speaking of pharmaceuticals and regulations of cash crops.
Yeah, that can look like a lot of things. Cannabis basics is where I really like to live because I find that even people who have used the medicine and the plant over many years don't really know all the things about it. Right, we come from an era of like Cheech and Chong,
It's funny though.
And meeting somebody on the corner and dipping in, and like it's a different way than now. Not only are we in a state that led the way around medicinal, but now it's rec. So I just find that it's important for people just to know. And the target audience right now that I'm moving more and more towards working with is people who work with juveniles and work with youth. That could be police officers. That could be probation officers. That could be juvenile justice centers. I really want to work with doctors more, nurses, people who are working with people around this as medicine who just don't know. Because like I said, people who even use it don't even really know. So that's kind of the area that I'm pushing most of my work toward, and moving away from even a lot of private wellness kind of coaching and working with these bigger organizations. I just feel like it will have a much bigger reach. And it's an area, like I said, where there needs to be so much support.
What are some of the things that you wish to teach people and expand the knowledge of around cannabis?
Yeah, we just want to take the oppression off of the plant, off of the medicine. I think it's important for people to know that we are wired for the medicine. We have an endocannabinoid system. There aren't many medicines and things that we take internally that our body is naturally set up for it. So I think even just knowing that should take off some of the myths, stereotypes, the things that we've been taught, over the last 100 years, just about. Because it goes back to that thing about it not being able to be monetized in the same way. So I think those are some of the most important things for people to know. And that whenever it's being used, I feel like it's medicine. People don't always think of it as medicine. And of course, some people are just, having fun in their own minds, getting high, so to speak. And I think it's still medicine, whether they know it or not. Who doesn't need an escape? Who doesn't need a fun relief from this world,
I have to be honest, I've been a cannabis user since I was a teenager. And at this point in my life, it's been less. And I remember thinking when I lived in the Bay Area and the discussion of legalization, recreational use especially, I felt suspicious of it from the government standpoint, because I felt like it becoming more accessible will lead more people to tap out more. Mm-hmm. And something about, I'm not talking about the criminality part that gets folks locked up, but the part of if something is harder for me to get, then I'm going to conserve it a little bit more. Mm-hmm. If it's hard for me to use it out in public, then I have to calculate more how I'm going to imbibe it. So my usage was, I think, less, and just using I statements, but I was really afraid of the culture at large being encouraged to tap out more and not be in their bodies and minds because of that. Like, stuff's getting really hard. Here, have another drug, because then it becomes a drug when we distill things into oils and all of these additives go into it now. So I just wanted to share that. I appreciate the work that you're doing around it because I'm still trying to figure out my relationship with it, and it is nice to like regulate my dosage and understand like this much or this type does this, and I only need this amount of it at this time of day or whatever that is. You know.
And when you think of the number of people who are on opioids, antidepressants, and all kinds of different things, I think at the very least, shifting to a different perspective of what treating something looks like in terms of using this as a medicine is a very basic place to start. We can figure out all the rest in terms of who gets it and how it looks, and are kids more susceptible now that it's edibles and in certain kind of packaging, and all that's real, but that's true of anything, right? We have this new culture where people are sober in a very proud way, so now kava has taken up a lane. Right? Kava and kratom has taken up a whole lane because now we're sober drinking, right? These things are doing the same damage to the liver that alcohol does, right?
Really?
Which we know is alcohol's pure poison. There have been studies over the last couple of weeks that have come out that people are now saying this isn't necessarily the lane to go, right? This also needs to be regulated in some kind of way. You only have to be 18 to indulge in it. So now how many people between 18 and 21 who aren't even getting to the point of drinking are having the same kind of damaged organ issues that people who drink excessively have? It's more and more. So I really think that anything that we use to medicate, we're going to have some kind of way of side-eyeing, regulation, making sure it's done in the right way. But we want to push people to do the things that are safer and that are better for the body. And I think we work out all the rest of those human pieces because we humans, we just not always going to do the right thing. It's just not how we made. You know, we have to buck the system and do different things, and it's part of it. But I think leading to a safer place is what really matters. And it's why I feel like I really stand by cannabis, because it's just safer than many of the other things that are used to treat all the different conditions that we have. I mean, who doesn't have PTSD? Who doesn't get depressed? Yes, there are varying degrees of these things, but these are things that we just deal with as humans. We all need some kind of way to lean into treatments or healthier ways around being around, you know, just here. As I keep saying, like, this is not easy, being in this existence. Whether you're walking through something that's happening that's a world news issue or whether it's something in your personal life, it's every day. It's everyday fight. You know, it's kind of BS at the baseline to be in this body. So every day is fighting to stay in this body in a way that's healthier. And the goal is just spending the new knowledge that we get every day or acquire to be a healthier person along the way until, you know, we're doing a different thing.
I'm Dream Queen. You're in the cab with me and my guest, Oriana Lee. Oriana, how can people get in touch with you, find you?
I'm Oriana Lee on pretty much every platform. TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. It's Oriana1EE on Instagram, but you look up Oriana Lee and you'll find me there.
Awesome. So the BS baseline. We talked about the many identities, the labels that society has put on us. Now, we're two people of color here, queer identified. And we were talking the other day about this has been going on for a long time. This fascist white supremacist system that we live in for a long time. And I like to just hear you expound a little bit more about the BS baseline and how you look at it in a bigger picture of being in America, on the planet. Like, this ain't new to some of us.
Right.
But it's a little bit intense and different with AI and the surveillance and
yes,
you know.
Yes. Yeah, I think the intensity is real. I think because we're in a social networking and a computer age, everything appears more intense than it is. I mean, it's kind of why these tools are here. It's kind of to keep us fear-based and tricked up. You know, but we're not dealing with new human ways, conditions, or any of these things. And I think that you know, under our current administration in the United States of America, we are kind of distracted and really caught up by a lot of the decisions that are being made. Not that we should not be paying attention or concerned. But, you know, like we talked about the other day, none of this stuff is really new, right? None of this kind of hate, none of this oppression, none of this kicking people when they're down. None of this is new. It's absolutely at the very base of this country. Everything we're experiencing now, when I think of what we're seeing the administration do in terms of just who can be here, how we can be here, what we can have as we're here, all of that goes to the foundation of how this country came to be. It's like I think we're just seeing a mirror of all of the things more than ever. And I think that coming behind a Democratic administration, which was before this, we tend to get quiet and feel like some of our needs are being met and they're being taken care of. We can trust the people in office, so we're not really paying attention to all the things that are happening. All of these things are always happening. They're happening under every administration. That's what it means to be a leader of this country, is to kind of be a puppet and to, from what I understand, I'm not a part of the 1%, but I understand that there's this 1% that kind of has a control over everything. And that didn't just start. So when I see us as just regular people walking about being so obsessively concerned with these things, I feel like we're being tricked again. We're being misdirected, because if we're giving all of our attention to this one human, what are we not seeing? Right? And if we're giving all of our attention to these things and issues outside of ourselves, back to where I started, what are we giving ourselves? It's like we're not even really healthy enough within ourselves to do the things we need for our own body, and then we're taking on all of these other stressors. And I think it's normal for us, as I said, to be impacted, but I think we need to do it in a context of looking at wellness and how are these things affecting us in a well way. Like if the news is making us upset when we're watching it, we could easily turn it off, But there's an addictive quality to knowing all of these things and being stressed that taps into our cortisol levels and keeps us in an anxious way, which we kind of start to think that's just how we are, right? It's almost like if we're not anxious, something's wrong.
Yeah, and I think there's some of that judgment coming from the outside too, where it's like, what do you mean you don't know? And that we have to say, did you know? What if, and to give each other the compassion to say, I saw this part and I know this part, and it's not all, might not all be rooted in the news, but I'm just kind of saying this out here because I think sometimes it's keeping up with the Joneses about current events too. Mm-hmm. There's so much information out here, and we're expected, if you're not informed, then you don't care.
Yeah, but there's so many ways to do that now. I tend to listen to some silly podcasters because they give me the news that I need in a humorous way. It goes back to the wise fool thing we were talking about, right? So it's like we even have more of a choice as to how we get our information now, where we tend to lean into this theory of 80%, they say 80 to 85% of the media is all coming from one entity. We'll keep those names unspoken on this network, but I think some of us know who that person is, and because of that, I'm wondering, why aren't we just leaning into the other ways of getting information? That's the whole broadness to the internet. It's access to all information. So yeah, you want to be discerning and you want to be discretionary, but what we know now about AP and these other outlets that news comes through, it's the same news. Mm-hmm. It's the same news. So now I'm looking for someone who can maybe put a kind of humorous spin on it, so I'm getting the information, but it's not taxing my nervous system at the same time.
It's one of my projects that I want to grow. In the Cab Radio looks a little bit like that, to present information that might not be touched on by mainstream media and work with my fellows, DJ Hot Diggity and Lil Queen Trash Mouth, who also have shows here. Excuse me. The Hatch Attack Hour on Fridays is Lil Queen Trash Mouth show. Corey, everybody knows Corey here, and she's on from 10 to 12 on Fridays, and Hot Diggity Philly is on from 5 to 7 on Saturday afternoons, and they both bring current events in, and also alternative ways of thinking. Socialism, communism, and a bit of history. When the three of us get together, it's just magic. I love doing shows with those two. We make people laugh. And one of the one of myselves is confused American. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm gonna come on and just be the comic relief, like because we sit down with each other and say, oh, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? And I'm like, nah, did you hear about this? And so then we're like, oh my God, it's like this, and then and it's all a lot, but we're also bringing levity to it that we've had people come up to us in the street and just say, love it when y'all are together. And so I'm looking for, more people to do stuff like this, and as things fall apart, as far as legacy media outlets, that some folks got to come up off this private money and fund more private media. I mean, absolutely. That's, these right-wing people, they have folks funding them. And then the rest of us are, looking in other directions of, don't deserving support or doing, burning ourselves out. But, legacy media, PBS, all these things crumbling. As things fall apart, doors open for new possibilities.
Absolutely.
So speaking of that, like homeschooling your kids, as the education system fails folks, and has failed many of us since... I would say Reconstruction and Jim Crow, we've had to educate our own people and watch that get dismantled. Folks are turning to homeschooling. How's that been for you? And also, what would you have liked to have seen to make it better?
Yeah, I feel like since this mandated public education has been around since like 1905, I feel like before that, pretty much to educate, you had to be homeschooled, right? There were different ways of it happening. It looked like maybe somebody who was rich bringing in tutors, and that's how the kids learned because there was no schools to send to. And as far as people who were not supposed to be reading and writing, we know we always been teaching each other to do the things. But I feel like this return to educating our own is what I feel like I've been a part of. I feel like this system has proven over and over, especially when it comes to people of Afro-Indigenous descent, that it's not for us. One of the things that made me really want to go in that direction is Malcolm X has a quote to the effect of speaking to basically how do we let our enemies educate our children, and then I started to process that, which leads me kind of back to, just to throw back to what you were saying about alternative thought. I think alternative thought is one thing. I think we need to learn to think. I think we don't even need to get to alternative thought. We just need to learn to think. We have our right to think for ourselves has been taken away from us because that's what public education is about. Teaching everyone to think the same way so that you then go out in the workforce and you produce, taxes. And you support the government in that way. So I feel like I had to go in that direction once I understood that the system was not going to be set up to serve my children. And I didn't know at that time I would end up having 5. I started with the thought of 1. And then I ended up having 1 girl and then 4 boys. And I was like, oh, absolutely not going into this system. This is not going to serve. I want my kids to be critical thinkers. That's kind of what I want them to be above all. And great humans. And I feel like they accomplished that. So that part felt like... it was easier than I thought it would be, but I wanted to do more things like I wanted to travel internationally with them. I felt like that was going to be a big part of their education. And while they have traveled a lot in the States, that's not anything I was able to really accomplish. So when you talk about like private funding, it makes me think about even people who say they support the home educating movement or the unschooling movement. There's funding that could be put toward that so that parents like me could do something like take their kids on a trip abroad. Right? That leads into some of these things that we won't be able to access without being in a school that offers a program like that, or some kind of foreign exchange program or something. That's just an example of something I would have done different. But overall, I don't feel like I would have done much different because they're all coming back to me now saying thank you. Of course, there were things along the way they wish they were doing like their friends were doing. And now that they're all adults, they look back and they say, I see why you did it the way you did it. So that feels like a great reward.
That's awesome. I think about what's happening now and people that I know with young children, and then the teachers that I know that are being disenfranchised at their jobs and undermined at the schools, the school system. And there's something inside of me that says we are going to come together and support each other in what I'm starting to think is a renaissance. America has to, after this, go through another renaissance.
Yeah.
And if those teachers that are feeling like the system is not supporting them and how they're teaching kids to think and feel.
Yeah.
And feel. I mean, we're in a place where they're saying empathy is part of what's wrong with America now. So resting, taking naps out of things, and then getting these people with parents who want to give their kids alternative educations, and in our communities and in our spaces to support each other in that. You know. Let's see. Is there something that you want to touch on while we've got about 6 minutes left?
Well, I mean, I want to engage this idea that you're speaking to, like about there having to be a renaissance. Because I mean, I agree that is a thing that I think is on the horizon. But then there's kind of this concept of burn down Babylon. And how are we going to get to that place without getting rid, basically, of all the stuff that's not serving us? And I just wonder how much thought you put into what that process looks like to get to Renaissance based on all that is kind of in the way of that, right? I mean, we have versions of Renaissance all the time. But I think to get to this type of country that many of us are pushing towards, we know that we've been a great dynasty for over 50 years. So there's no reason that we're not the top of all the great things. And unfortunately, we're kind of the bottom of all the great things. So I just wondered if you had any thought about how we get to that place of Renaissance with all of this kind of murkiness, so to speak, being in between us now and us then.
Well, I have to warn you, it gets dark.
It would have to. It would have burned down.
It's not cute, you know. Yeah. I think many will not survive. I bring attention to how revolutionary and civil rights movements are very tied to spirituality, and I want to take off religious, but there are people who belong to actual religions who subscribe to values that are compassionate. So it's important, in my understanding of the way things are happening, that we are in touch with the eternal nature of the soul, and that then once we take off fear of death off the table, then we become more powerful. Because that's something that fear of discomfort, learning how to manage discomfort, learning how to self-regulate, manage our anger and rage and the retaliatory vibes that come with, you know, you did this to me, an eye for an eye, and all of this. There's a lot of thought that has to, and feeling, and learning of compassion that has to come along. Then being able to do more than one thing at a time, to be able to hold more than one idea at a time. So as this is very, you're kind of calling me out, because I don't usually go this dark here on the show, but folks are looking at Gavin Newsom and the next Democrat that's going to continue the cycle of the ratchet effect, is what Lil Queen Trash Mouth calls it. And I'm sorry, like I just, we have to let that go. It's going to get darker before it gets brighter. And as we do that, those of us who are tapped in to healing, the understanding the many selves, we're being called forward, and we've been in the vanguard, which is a very uncomfortable place, I think, up to now, because folks are like, you know, you're just doom and gloom, or you're weird, or you're going to be broke, or you live outside the system in this way. Why are you doing stuff the hard way? And here I am, 48 years old now, and people are like, how do you do that? Like, stuff's falling apart. And I'm like, I've been punk rock since I was 15. So, you know, I just use less. And once, you know, and then I start teaching other people how to do it. Yes. So if, you know, and calling upon my ancestors and having a spiritual practice really helps me and knowing that 50 years isn't that long. So throwing out the concept of linear time and saying, hey, this is a walk that we have to walk as things are going on around us, you know? So that's what I mean by holding more than one thing at a time.
That makes sense.
And things are going to continue to fall apart because this little 50-year empire, that's like nothing. Yep. It's nothing.
Right.
And it's built on what it's built on is unsustainable, and life is gonna life. So when I tell folks, like, we're looking at a lot of, it looks like the evil, for lack of a better word, or the lizard people or whoever's out here trying to literally acting like they don't need the earth, acting like they don't need other human beings, as it seems like through social media and stuff, like they're winning. There's forces at work for light that we need to continue to give energy to, attention to, and feed. And that's where I call in. When I call in my ancestors, I'm like beings of light who walk with me. Yes. You know? Yes. Open the doors with me, stand with me, because I know they're out here working. Yeah. And I have to give them the AI too. Because, I mean, I don't know. We call, there's like Spotify, we're like, that's Ancestor Radio. Because sometimes, you know, it'd be on a thing and then the song come on the shuffle. I'm like, there's 4,000 some songs in here. And this is the one that has to do with exactly what I need right now that I didn't say out loud. But my spirit team is tapped. Ancestral intelligence. That's right. And it is, I mean, the machinery is destroying the planet. But if I have to live with it for a certain amount of time, then I have to understand the ghost in the machine might be great grandma.
Absolutely. You know? Which, yeah, absolutely. That's a whole nother hour, right? So we're talking about what that could look like in the future. But I think on kind of piggybacking on what you're saying, and where I would leave everything is human rights. Yes. You know, human rights. All rights are human rights. It's all human rights. And when we can get past the divisiveness that has been put before us, right? These constructs were put on us. Race was put on us. Gender, class, these things were all put on us. We didn't naturally, in the millions of years of humans, we didn't think these ways, right? We thought in terms of culture, ethnicity, where we were from. We didn't even have surnames, right? That's pretty new to humans. So knowing that, and that foundationally we're humans, I think that's where we're going to start to overturn all of it. It doesn't mean ignoring any of the things we are, right? It doesn't mean not noticing or being like any type of erasure, you know, or being colorblind. It doesn't take that to recognize that beyond all of the ways in which we are different, we are alike and that we're humans. I feel like if we can align in that way, that's where we start to overthrow all of the things that we don't like, all of those evils and the government and all of the things that we want to break down so we can get to this place of renaissance and peace and love.
Ashe. You start talking about the band of the hand, and I'm out of time. I want to. You got to come back and we'll go into that. Yes, Oriana, thank you so much for being here. In the Cab Radio is produced by Jada White, aka Dream Queen. Original theme music produced by Baby Weekend Boys and Icky Mac the Beat Jugular. Learn more at In the Cab Radio at Linktree. Thank you so much for tuning in.